The windows of the Whitmore estate caught the last gold light of the Savannah evening, glowing like the whole house had been painted in fire. James Whitmore stood in the middle of his sweeping study, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, untouched, a fireplace no one ever used behind him. In his hand was a glass of $100 scotch that tasted like nothing. Not a sound in the house, not a footprint on the velvet rug. Just silence, thick and heavy like the humidity outside. He owned 4 houses across the country, a private jet, a downtown penthouse he hadn't slept in for years, and a portfolio that made him one of the wealthiest men in the Southeast. Real estate mogul, preservationist, Southern gentleman. Magazine covers called him the King of Historic Savannah. Strangers admired him, business partners feared him. And still, when he came home, no one was there to ask him how his day was. Behind every success was a trade. James had traded everything for this. "Fortzer." Whitmore, his assistant's voice came from the hallway. "In here." A moment later, Caleb stepped inside, holding a padded envelope. He was young, sharp, always overdressed like he was auditioning to be James's younger clone. "This came for you. Marked confidential." James took it, brows raised. No name on the return address, no company logo, just his name in black ink. He opened it slowly, fingers deliberate. Inside were 3 photographs. His hands froze. In the first, Monica sat at an outdoor cafe with a man. Her hand rested on the table, palm up. The man's fingers were brushing hers. In the second, they were walking through Forsyth Park, the same man's hand on the small of her back. The third showed them in conversation outside a modest hotel. Her face was tilted toward him, smiling. The envelope fell to the floor, landing near his polished shoes. No note, no explanation. Just 3 images that rewrote the last 2 years of his life. "She said she had a meeting this morning," he whispered to himself, voice distant. "I'm sorry," Caleb asked. "Nothing. Thank you, you can go." As the assistant stepped out, James sank into his chair like the wind had been knocked out of him. His mind tried to form sentences, rational thoughts, but all he could see was Monica's face, smiling for someone else. They had married quietly 2 years ago, after a whirlwind of unlikely meetings and long conversations that lasted until dawn. Monica Alvarez wasn't the type of woman his circle expected. She didn't wear pearls. She didn't sip cocktails. She worked in community housing, drove her own car, and refused his money more times than he could count. She was warm, grounded, purposeful. James had fallen for her in a way that scared him, and maybe that was always the problem. A soft knock interrupted his thoughts. This time it was Victor Ramsey, longtime friend and legal advisor. "James, you okay? Have a seat." James handed over the photos without a word. Victor flipped through them, slow and measured. He didn't react much. Just gave a low breath through his nose. "You know this guy, no." "Then let me ask you something," Victor said, placing the photos on the table. "You ever think this wasn't about you?" James looked up. "I mean," Victor continued, "you bring in a woman from a whole different world. No prenup, no financial protection. Maybe she played the long game. That's not Monica." "You sure?" James stood restless. "She stayed working at the shelter. She refused my checks. She cooks dinner. She folds my shirts." Victor shrugged. "That's how you build trust. Make the fall that much harder." The words sank in like poison. James said nothing. He just walked over to the bar cart, poured another glass he wouldn't drink, and stared out the window. Outside, the property looked perfect. Not a blade of grass out of place. Inside, his whole world had tilted. That night, Monica came home. Humming. She dropped her keys in the bowl near the door, kicked off her flats, and called out, "I grabbed dinner from that Thai place you like. Hope you're hungry." She stopped cold when she saw him. James was standing in the living room, still in his work clothes, holding the photos. "Where were you this morning?" Monica blinked. "Budget review meeting." Why, who's the man in these pictures? She stepped closer, brow furrowed. James handed her the envelope. She pulled out the images, studied them. Her face didn't change, just confusion melting into recognition, and then something else. Hurt. "That's Malik. We work together. You've met him." James shook his head. "You never told me about private meetings? Coffee shops? Hotels?" She looked up, eyes wide. "Because there's nothing to tell." "Looks like there is." Monica's voice dropped. "I don't know who took these or why they think twisting moments mean something, but that's not what it looks like. Then what is it he's helping secure funding for a new shelter wing? We've had planning meetings all month. You're welcome to read the emails." James stared at her like he was trying to read a foreign language. "Were you going to tell me any of this? I tried. You don't listen. You ask how my day was, and before I can finish, you're back on your phone." Her voice cracked. Not loud, just tired. James turned away. "I can't do this," he said finally. Monica's shoulders stiffened. "Can't do what? Play games? Be the man who gets lied to? I have never lied to you, doesn't feel that way." "So that's it. One envelope from someone you don't even know, and suddenly I'm a liar." James didn't answer. Monica's eyes filled, but she didn't let the tears fall. She walked to the door, picked up her flats, and turned. "I thought you saw me. I really did. But maybe you only ever saw what made you feel good." Then she left. No yelling, no slam of the door, just absence. And for the first time in years, James felt poor. He spent the night wandering through the house, past their half-drunk wine glasses, past the spare room filled with her non-profit files. He paused in the laundry room where her favorite hoodie still hung on a hook. He didn't sleep. By morning, her side of the closet was empty, and so was he. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The rain hadn't let up since morning, soft and steady, soaking the brick sidewalks of Savannah, like the sky itself was grieving something it couldn't name. Monica Alvarez sat on the edge of a bed that wasn't hers, in a guest room she hadn't expected to see again. Her friend Lena had offered the space immediately, no questions, no conditions, just keys pressed into her palm and a warm hug that nearly cracked her resolve. She hadn't cried. Not when she packed, not when she folded the photo of her and James from their wedding day and placed it quietly inside a shoebox beneath her clothes. Not even when she slipped off the gold band from her finger and left it on the marble counter of the bathroom facing up. But now, in the quiet of this unfamiliar room, surrounded by old books and the scent of lavender, her fingers trembled. Lena knocked gently. "You want tea or something stronger?" Monica forced a smile. "Tea, please." "Strong tea, you got it." When the door clicked shut again, Monica exhaled. Her hands instinctively touched her stomach. She wasn't showing. Not yet. But she could feel it, something soft, delicate, unfamiliar curling inside her like a whisper. She hadn't told James. She hadn't even told herself, not really. She'd missed 2 cycles, but with everything going on, she thought it was the stress, the ache behind her eyes, the constant fatigue, the nausea she brushed off as nerves. But yesterday morning, as she stood brushing her teeth in Lana's bathroom, something told her to check. And there it was. 2 pink lines. Bold. Unmistakable. Her first instinct was to call him. She had picked up the phone. She had stared at his name. But her hand never moved. He had made it clear. His trust had limits. His love had terms. So she sat there now, carrying something he didn't know existed, and trying to understand what it meant to be entirely alone. When Lena returned with the tea, she set it down with a look. Not pity? Something fiercer? Protective? You don't have to talk, but I just want to say this. Lena began sitting beside her. Whatever happened, it wasn't because you weren't enough. Monica blinked hard. He didn't even ask. He just saw what he wanted to see. Lena nodded. That man's been rich so long he's forgotten how much trust is worth. You don't treat love like a business transaction. I don't hate him, Monica said quietly. That's the worst part. You don't have to hate him, but you do have to let him go. Monica didn't reply. She just lifted the teacup with 2 hands and let the steam blur her vision. Weeks passed. She didn't go back to the estate. Everything she needed she had in a suitcase. She told her supervisor at the non-profit that she needed to shift to part-time. Didn't say why. Just kept showing up clipboard in hand, walking hallways lined with stories much harder than hers. She threw herself into the work. That helped. Helping others always had. But the nights were harder. Lena worked late shifts at the hospital, and Monica often found herself curled on the living room couch, notebook in hand, trying to map out her future on paper. She made lists, things she'd need for the baby, things she could sell, grants she could apply for, support programs she used to refer clients to now becoming her reality. And every time she wrote the word baby, her heart cracked a little wider. She'd never thought this would be her path. She didn't need a fairy tale, but she had believed in them, in what she and James had built. In their Sunday mornings reading in bed, in the way he used to watch her speak at community events, pride tucked behind that quiet smile. He'd said he loved how strong she was, until she was strong in a way he didn't understand. Her phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Monica, just letting you know James has started divorce proceedings. Legal notices are being prepared. No hope you're okay. No acknowledgement of what had happened. She closed the message and placed the phone face down. That night, Lena found her standing barefoot in the kitchen, staring out at the dark street through the window over the sink. You're not sleeping. No, you need to eat more. I know. Lena hesitated. Have you decided what you're going to do? Monica turned. About the baby, about everything. Monica leaned against the counter, arms crossed over her chest. I'm going to keep it, she said. I don't have a plan, but I've walked women through worse. If I can't walk myself through this, what am I doing in that line of work? Lena nodded. No hesitation. You need anything. Diapers, food, rides back, rubs, financial spreadsheets, I got you? Monica laughed softly. Back rubs, I'll outsource those. They both smiled. For the first time in days, it felt real. After Lena went to bed, Monica sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the dark screen of her phone. James's name was still in her contacts, still bookmarked with a little star, still under favorites. She opened a new message. Her thumb hovered over the keyboard. You should know, I'm pregnant. She stared at the words for a long time, then backspaced. Typed again. I didn't tell you because I didn't trust your reaction, but you're going to be a father. Again, she erased it. Finally, she just locked the phone, tossed it into her bag, and pulled the blanket over her knees. Some truths deserved to be heard, but not all deserved to be shared. Especially not with someone who hadn't asked. She reached for her notebook again, flipped to a clean page. At the top, she wrote, Plan A. Then she circled it. Hard. The scent of cinnamon and fresh bread drifted up through the floorboards. It was how most mornings began, now woken by the bakery downstairs, with a quiet hum of life that felt more stable than it was. Monica pulled on a soft sweater over her tank top, her baby bump barely noticeable beneath the fabric. 5 months along. She moved slower now, but not weaker. Every day brought something new, aches, kicks, a fresh wave of how will I do this, but also strangely a deepening sense of purpose. The apartment above the bakery had been a blessing. Mr. and Mrs. Blakely, who ran the place, had once been clients at her non-profit struggling after a foreclosure. Monica had fought tooth and nail to keep their business from going under, helped them find grants, even pitched in behind the counter when they were short-staffed. When they heard what happened, they didn't hesitate. "Stay as long as you need," Mrs. Blakely had insisted, "and when that baby comes, you'll hear no crying complaints from us." We raised 5 kids in this space. The apartment was small, old, and drafty in the winter, but it was full of warmth. Monica had hung string lights across the ceiling and kept tiny plants on the windowsill. She started every morning with tea and the sound of bakery trays clattering downstairs. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. And after everything that mattered more. She glanced at her planner. Interviews today for a new outreach coordinator at the shelter. She wasn't ready to go on leave yet, but her steps were more careful now, her back aching just enough to remind her slow down. At the shelter office, the day moved like clockwork. Monica reviewed files, sat through interviews, and handled 2 intake emergencies before lunch. But the last interview of the day caught her off guard. Malik Davis stepped into her office with a quiet knock. He looked unsure, his usual confidence softened around the edges. She looked up, surprised. "Malik." "Hey," he said gently. "I saw the posting. I didn't want to call ahead, just thought maybe I could help." There was a beat of silence. Monica leaned back in her chair. "I didn't think I'd see you again. I didn't want to get in the middle of everything back then. But I heard through Lena you were hiring. I figured if you needed an extra pair of hands." She studied him. His suit was modest tie, slightly crooked. He looked tired but kind. "Why now? Because this place matters to you," he said. "And honestly, it matters to me too. I left my last role because the board wanted numbers, not people. I miss doing work that actually changed lives. If you'll have me, I'd like to be part of it again." Monica didn't answer right away. She thought of James, how one misread photograph with Malik had triggered a chain of disbelief and silence that had broken her life open. But she also remembered Malik in those photos, smiling. Respectful. Nothing ever crossed a line. "All right," she said softly. "We'll do a trial. Part-time for now. Let's see how it feels." Malik smiled, genuine. "Deal." As he turned to go, she stopped him. "And Malik?" He looked back. "Thank you for not disappearing." That evening, Monica sat curled on the couch with a heating pad at her back and her hand resting on her belly. She hadn't told anyone yet, but she was starting to feel fluttering. Small, infrequent, like soft fish brushing the inside of a bowl. "You've got good timing," she whispered. "Just when I was starting to forget what hope feels like." Her phone buzzed on the coffee table. She leaned forward, heart flickering in her chest. It wasn't James, it never was, but still she always checked. A message from Lena. "How are you holding up?" Monica stared at the screen. Typed erased, then finally sent better. "I think I'm starting to breathe again." Lena's reply came quick. "That baby is lucky to have you. Don't forget that." She turned the phone over, screen down. Across town, James sat in his home office, surrounded by silence. He hadn't touched Monica's side of the bed since she left, hadn't moved her toothbrush, hadn't canceled the standing floral delivery she set up for the kitchen. The white orchids kept coming. Every Friday. Victor had tried to keep him focused. "We need to finalize the deal with Charleston. You've got 4 properties in limbo." But James didn't care. He kept thinking about how fast it had all unraveled, how sure he'd been, how easily he'd let fear replace faith. There were nights he considered reaching out. But what would he say? I'm sorry I didn't trust you. I miss you, even though I ended us. He was a man who built empires out of falling walls. But this, he didn't know how to rebuild. Back at the shelter, Malik was settling in quickly. He brought donuts on Tuesdays and always stayed late to finish paperwork. Clients liked him. He had a way of listening without judgment, and his easy humor softened the weight of the job. Still, Monica kept her distance. One afternoon, they were organizing storage bins in the back room when he asked, "You ever think about going back to what? To the life before?" She paused, holding a box of winter coats. "No," she said. "That life ended. This one just began." Malik nodded, not pushing. He never did. But one night as she was leaving, he caught up to her at the door. "Monica, can I ask something?" She turned. "That day, the photos, you never said anything. Not to me." She looked at him for a long moment, the air between them full of unspoken things. "I didn't need to," she said quietly. "I knew the truth. And now so do you." He nodded once, respectfully. As she walked to her car, her hand instinctively moved to her stomach. The stars were out. Savannah was quiet, humming its slow southern song beneath the streetlights. She didn't know what the future held. But for the first time in months, she wasn't afraid of it. If you enjoyed this video, comment 1 to let me know. If not, comment 2. Your thought mattered to me either way. The Friday night lights lit up the field, like a stage casting long shadows over the bleachers packed with cheering parents, restless teens, and small kids waving foam fingers twice their size. Savannah High's last home game of the season always brought the community out. Crisp air, marching band echoing, the kind of night where everyone forgot, just for a while, how hard the rest of life could be. Monica sat halfway up the stands, bundled in a thick cardigan. Her sons were seniors now, 18. Micah, her wide-smiling, boundless boy, was starting cornerback. Diego, quiet and thoughtful, managed the team's stat logs from the sidelines. He preferred numbers to contact. Always had. "Micah looks focused tonight," Lena said beside her, sipping from a thermos. "Must be that scholarship scout they keep whispering about." Monica smiled, one hand resting over her chest, as if trying to calm the quiet thump of nerves beneath. "He's got heart. He'll do something with it, just like his mama." The teams lined up. Whistle blew. The first play snapped. Micah burst off the line, sprinting downfield. His speed, clean, controlled, almost elegant, always took Monica's breath for a second. The boy moved like he was running towards something more than a touchdown. But with 2 minutes left in the second quarter, something changed. He stumbled. Just a little. Not enough to make the crowd notice, but Monica saw it. His step faltered, hand brushing his chest. He pushed through the play, made the tackle, but by the time the ref blew the whistle, Micah was on one knee. Diego was already at his side. The crowd grew quiet. Monica stood. Micah shook his head like he was trying to shake something off. But then he looked up at Diego, and whatever he saw in his twin's eyes, it crumpled him. He fell forward. No collision, no contact, just collapsed like someone pulled the strings from a puppet. A scream somewhere in the stands. Monica's body moved before her mind caught up, feet pounding down the bleacher steps, her breath catching as if the world had tilted sideways. By the time she reached the field, paramedics were already running. Micah wasn't moving. "Micah!" She called, voice hoarse, already kneeling, gripping his face. "Baby, look at me, open your eyes, please." His lips were pale, his hands cold. Diego knelt on the other side, face drained of all color. "Mom, what's happening? What's wrong with him?" "I don't know." Diego called Lena. "Get her to the ER, now tell her it's Micah." The rest of the night blurred into sirens and fluorescent lights. At the hospital, Monica sat hunched in a hallway chair, her cardigan pulled tight around her. Diego hadn't let go of her hand. He hadn't said a word since they arrived. Lena came flying through the double doors, still in her hospital scrubs, hair pinned up. "I paged cardiology," she said breathlessly. "They're running an echo and blood panel. His vitals were unstable, but he's stable now. They've ruled out trauma. It's not injury-related." "Monica." She knelt in front of her. Her voice softened. "They're looking at cardiac causes." Monica blinked. "Cardiac, he's 18. He's never had heart problems. He passed every physical. Some conditions don't show up in standard screens." A long pause. "I need you to prepare yourself. This could be genetic." The word landed like a knife. "What do you mean?" "Genetic," Monica Lena said carefully. "Does James have any family history of heart disease?" Monica's throat tightened. "I don't know," she whispered. "What about your side?" "No, nothing like this." Lena looked at Diego. "Have you ever felt faint, lightheaded chest pressure?" Diego hesitated. Sometimes he admitted, especially when it's hot out. "I thought I was just dehydrated." Monica turned to him, alarm rising. "Why didn't you tell me?" He looked away. "You work so hard, Mom. You already worry enough." "Sweetheart." A nurse appeared. "Mrs. Alvarez, yes, cardiology, would like to speak with you and your son." They were led into a small conference room. White walls, a flickering ceiling light that hadn't been fixed yet. Dr. Snyder, a gentle-eyed man in his 50s, greeted them with a chart in hand. "We ran a full panel," he began. "Micah's symptoms suggest a rare but serious condition, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a genetic disorder that causes thickening of the heart muscle, and it can go undetected for years." Monica's voice cracked. "But he'll be okay. He's stable now." "But there are risks. We'll need to monitor him closely. In some cases, especially with identical twins, it's recommended to evaluate the sibling immediately. We ran Diego's labs while you waited." The doctor looked up, his voice quiet. "His results show early signs of the same condition." Monica gripped the edge of the table. "Is there a cure?" "No," Dr. Snyder said gently. "But there is a treatment. A stem cell transplant from a compatible donor can improve outcomes. In both cases, the ideal donor would be biological, preferably the father." The room froze. Diego looked at her, slowly, confused. Monica stared at the doctor. "I'm sorry," she said slowly. "Did you say they both need a transplant?" "Yes. And quickly. We'll refer you to a genetic specialist, but we'll also need to contact their father as soon as possible. Do you have a way to reach him?" She couldn't speak. The room spun, then steadied. "I have his number," she whispered. The nurse handed her a clipboard. "Consent forms. Genetic release." Her hands moved on autopilot. Outside the room, Diego caught her arm. "Mom? What's going on? I'll explain everything," she said softly. "But right now we need to focus on your brother. And you." He nodded, not understanding, but trusting her like he always had. It wasn't until she stood in the hospital parking lot alone beneath the buzzing streetlight that she finally pulled out her phone. James's number was still in her contacts. She hadn't spoken to him in over 18 years. She tapped it, listened as it rang. Once, twice. He picked up, a pause, then a voice low and familiar. "Hello," she didn't waste time. "It's Monica." Silence. "You have 2 sons," she said, her voice shaking. "And they're both in the hospital. If you want to see them alive, you need to come now." The silence on the other end of the line stretched too long. James Monica's voice cracked the cool night air, biting against her skin as she clutched her phone tighter. A breath unsteady. "Monica," he finally said, low and disoriented. "You said, sons?" "Yes." Her voice steadied, but her chest thudded. "Twin boys. They're 18. And one of them collapsed last night during a football game. He's in critical care. She could hear his breath catch. They're saying it's genetic, some kind of heart condition. Both boys have it. He didn't interrupt. They need a stem cell transplant. A match from a biological parent is their best chance. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, barely above a whisper. Because you didn't ask, she said, cold and calm. There was a pause, then a quiet, shaky exhale from James. Where are you, St. Joseph's? Cardiac ICU. I'll be there in an hour. The line went dead. Monica lowered the phone slowly and stared at the horizon where the night met the rooftops of Savannah. The weight of her words lingered echoing in her chest. She hadn't spoken his name aloud in years. Now she had summoned him like a ghost. Back inside, Diego sat curled in one of the waiting room chairs, hoodie drawn over his head, earbuds in. His foot tapped, restless. When Monica touched his shoulder, he looked up fast. Is he coming? He asked. She nodded. Diego didn't ask more, just looked down again, eyes blinking faster than usual. 2 floors up, Micah remained sedated. Tubes, machines, heart monitors blinking in stubborn rhythm. Monica stepped into his room alone. The beeping was soft, rhythmic, a soundtrack she was already beginning to hate. She pulled the chair close to his bedside and took his hand gently. I told him, she whispered. Your father. I said you needed him. I don't know what he'll do or how this ends, but you've always deserved to be known. Micah didn't stir. She smoothed his curls away from his forehead and leaned closer. You have no idea how hard I prayed I'd never need to say his name again. But I'd say it 1,000 times if it meant keeping you. She didn't hear the elevator doors or the soft footsteps coming down the hall. But when she looked up, he was standing in the doorway. James. He looked older, more than 18 years could explain. His eyes were the same, but the edges of him had dulled. He wore a navy sweater and jeans too casual for the man she remembered, and for a moment she wondered if he had changed or just run out of armor. Their eyes met. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. He started. Don't, she said quietly, rising. Not yet. She stepped out of the way, motioned towards the bed. He's sedated. You can talk to him if you want. James stepped forward like he was walking into sacred ground. His gaze locked onto Micah's face, and something in him broke. It was subtle, but Monica saw it. His hands trembled as he gripped the railing. He looks like you, he whispered. But he's got my chin. He has your stubbornness too. James let out a choked laugh. I deserve that? Monica crossed her arms, leaned against the far wall. Watching. He turned to her voice, lower now. They both. Yes. Diego too. Early signs. He closed his eyes, head bowed. I didn't know. No, you didn't want to know. James looked up sharply, regret flashing behind his eyes. I looked for you, he said. Years ago, when the silence got too loud. I just couldn't make sense of it. I thought if you had something to say, you would have said it. I wrote you a letter, she said, 2 weeks after I left. I never sent it. I was afraid you'd think I wanted something from you. That's what pride does, James. It makes you think you're protecting yourself when really you're just hiding. He nodded slowly. Was it worth it? She asked, softer now. Everything you gained by letting me go? No, he said, without hesitation. Not for a second. They stood there quiet, the only sound the steady beep from the machines. I'll get tested immediately, James said. Whatever they need, I'll do it. It's not guaranteed you'll be a match, Monica said. But I have to try. A nurse peeked in, clipboard in hand. Mr. Whitmore, Dr. Snyder is ready for you downstairs in labs. James glanced at Monica. Go, she said. I'll stay with him. He left without another word. Hours passed. Morning light filtered through the blinds as the city woke around them. Monica sat between her boys, one unconscious one pacing, and tried to hold herself together. James returned mid-morning, still in his sweater, eyes bloodshot. "They drew what felt like half my blood," he said with a weak smile. Monica nodded. "They'll rush the typing. We'll know within a day or two." He hesitated. "Can I see Diego?" She hesitated longer. "He knows nothing about you. I'd like to change that." "I'm not asking for a place in your life," he said quietly. "Just a chance to be useful. After that, it's up to you." She searched his face. The arrogance was gone. Something softer had replaced it. Regret, yes, but also something steadier. She nodded. James followed her to the family waiting room, where Diego was sitting by the vending machine, tapping a pen against his notebook. He looked up as they approached. Diego's eyes narrowed, cautious. "Diego," Monica said gently. "This is James." James swallowed hard. "I'm your father." The silence between them was deep and immediate. "You're the reason Mom cries when she thinks I'm asleep," Diego said, his voice quiet but sharp. James blinked, stunned. Diego stood, arms crossed. "I don't know what you want. But we don't need your money." "I'm not here to offer money," James replied. "I'm here because your brother needs me, and because I've failed you both. I won't ask for forgiveness, but I'll do whatever it takes to help." Diego stared at him for a long time. Then he nodded once. "Then start by sitting down." James lowered himself into the seat across from him. For the first time in 18 years, they breathed the same air. The cost of silence had finally come due. The quiet hum of the hospital at 2 a.m. was unlike anything else. Monica sat by Micah's bedside, a styrofoam cup of lukewarm coffee resting between her palms untouched. The monitors beside her clicked and beeped with clinical precision, but her mind was miles away, stuck in the past, flickering through moments she thought were behind her. James had stayed until visiting hours ended. He hadn't pushed, hadn't raised his voice, hadn't asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. But what shook her more than anything was what he hadn't done. No defenses, no excuses, just presence. She hadn't decided yet whether that made it easier or harder. Micah shifted just slightly, a flutter of movement. Monica set the coffee down and leaned in, brushing his hair off his damp forehead. "Hey," she whispered. "You with me?" His eyelids twitched. Then slowly they opened. Clouded, heavy, but open. "Mom," his voice was hoarse, cracked around the edges. "Oh, baby," she breathed, taking his hand. "I'm here." He looked around, disoriented. What happened?" "You collapsed during the game. The doctors say it's your heart, Micah. You've got something called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's a condition you were born with, but we didn't know." He stared at her eyes, widening. Am I gonna die?" The words hit her like glass. No, listen to me." She leaned closer, her voice trembling but firm. "They're going to treat you. And we've already started testing donors. We're going to figure this out. I promise." Micah blinked slowly, then frowned. "Where's Diego? He's okay. They're watching him too, just to be safe." Micah's voice dropped to a whisper. "Mom, I don't feel right." She swallowed hard and pressed the call button for the nurse. "It's okay. I'm not going anywhere." As the nurse arrived, Monica kissed his hand and stood back watching the professionals work, while something inside her cracked again. Later that morning, she stepped out into the hallway and nearly walked straight into James. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His shirt was wrinkled. His eyes carried that raw, shell-shocked look she remembered from the first months after their separation, like he'd aged years overnight. "Is he awake?" he asked. She nodded. "Briefly. He's scared. I don't blame him. They stood in silence for a moment, both staring at the bland hallway carpet. He asked for you? Monica said quietly. James looked up, startled. I didn't tell him much. Just that you're here. I don't want to scare him. You won't. She paused. But don't lie to him. He's smart. He'll know. James nodded, then followed her back into the room. Micah was awake, but drowsy. When he saw James enter, his brow furrowed. Who's that? Monica sat on the edge of the bed. Micah, this is James. Micah turned slowly, studying the man. You're my dad. It wasn't a question. James stepped forward, tentative. I am, he said softly. And I'm sorry it took this long to say it. Micah looked at him for a long time. No anger, just tired eyes trying to understand a puzzle that had been missing pieces his whole life. You got good timing, he murmured. James let out a breath. I wish I didn't. The room quieted again. Are you going to help me? Micah asked, eyes sharp now, like with the transplant stuff. James nodded. They're running the tests now. I'll do whatever it takes. You have my word. Micah blinked slowly, then looked away. James didn't press, just sat in the chair across from the bed and waited. Downstairs, Diego paced the hospital courtyard in slow circles, earbuds in but no music playing. When he saw Malik walking up the path with a paper bag in hand, he pulled out one earbud. Hey, Diego said. You didn't have to come. Monica texted, Malik replied. Said you hadn't eaten anything in hours. Figured I'd bribe you with a sausage biscuit. Diego managed a smile and took the bag. Thanks. They sat on the edge of a fountain, quiet for a minute. You know, when I first started working with your mom, she didn't let anyone in, Malik said. She built these walls so high I thought she might be part castle. Diego smiled weakly. Yeah, she still does that. But you know what? I learned, Malik continued. She's not afraid of hard things. She's just tired of people leaving when things get hard. Diego swallowed. She didn't tell us about him. Not once. Maybe because she thought she'd have to explain why he wasn't there. Diego looked down. He's trying now. I know, but it feels fake. Maybe it will for a while. But sometimes people show up too late and still mean it. Back inside, Monica stood at the nurse's station reviewing updates on Micah's chart. When she turned, James was behind her. He fell asleep, he said. He asked about sports, said he wanted to know if I ever played. Did you? Only long enough to learn I wasn't built for it, he said with a faint smile. I told him that. Monica looked at him, the softness in his voice unfamiliar. I never wanted this for him, James added. For either of them. Missing their lives. Missing you. She looked away, throat tight. It's not about what you wanted. It's about what they needed. I know that now. They needed a father. And they'll have one. Starting now. Monica met his eyes, searching. Don't make promises you can't keep. I'm not, he said, his voice firmer now. This is my chance to show them who I am, who I should have been. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away. Outside the window, the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the city. It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. James sat alone in the hospital cafeteria, his untouched coffee cooling fast in the paper cup. Around him, early morning staff buzzed through clinking trays and murmuring about weekend plans. But his world had narrowed to a chair, at a plastic table, a wall of vending machines, and a memory that wouldn't leave him alone. Micah's voice, raspy, laced with disbelief, kept looping in his mind. You got good timing. That hadn't been gratitude. It had been survival laced with sarcasm, the kind a kid uses to protect himself from the people who were supposed to show up but didn't. James had stood in boardrooms with billion-dollar deals on the table and never once felt as unsteady as he did sitting beside his own son. He rubbed his temples. He could still hear the slight shake in Monica's voice from earlier. Don't make promises you can't keep. God, how many times had he already broken that rule? His phone buzzed. A text from Victor. Lab results in. You're a match. Full compatibility. I'll walk you through next steps. James exhaled hard, closing his eyes. It was a start, not redemption. But maybe a door. Back upstairs, Monica was by the window in Micah's room, her shoulders drawn tight as she watched the sunrise. The light traced her cheekbone and caught in her curls. James paused in the doorway, unsure whether to speak. She sensed him anyway. Is it you? She asked, still looking out. Yeah. Results. He stepped forward. I'm a full match. She turned then. Her eyes widened relief, fighting past weeks of tension. James gave her a small nod. They said the odds were 1 in 4. But we got lucky. She looked away, quickly, blinking fast. You okay? He asked softly. I haven't slept in 2 days. Let me take the next shift. She almost smiled. You don't know the rotation. I'll figure it out. They stood there a moment longer, something between them softening, still fragile but less frayed. Just then, Malik appeared at the door with 2 coffees in hand. Morning, he said, stepping in. Didn't know you'd be here already. James straightened his expression neutral. Monica took the coffee he offered and gave a tired thank you. Malik, this is James. James, Malik. The 2 men exchanged a nod. Not quite a handshake. Not cold, but not warm either. I was just heading out, James said. Micah's resting. Thought I'd walk the wing a bit. He left quietly, giving them space. But not before glancing back long enough to catch how naturally Malik leaned against the wall, like this was normal. Like he belonged here. Outside in the hallway, James paced. Is that the man from the photos, he wondered? The one he'd assumed was an affair. The spark that had burned his trust to the ground. He leaned against the cold tile, guilt catching up fast. Because now, with clarity, he saw it. It hadn't been betrayal. It had been support. A good man stepping into the gap he had left. In Micah's room, Malik set the coffee down beside Monica and leaned forward slightly. How's Diego? He asked. Still at the hotel with Lena. They needed a break. He's scared, trying not to show it. He gets that from you. She gave him a look. Is that a compliment? Absolutely. He hesitated. I can step back if it's too complicated, he said quietly. What you and James? The boys? This whole situation? I don't want to make anything harder. Monica shook her head. Malik, you're not in the way. You've been here every step, I don't forget that. But things are shifting. I can feel it. Monica paused, her voice careful. Nothing's decided. Nothing's easy. I'm not asking for anything. Just let me be part of the picture. She looked at him, then really looked. And for the first time in days, she saw not just support, but quiet affection. It startled her, because she realized he'd always been there, not pushing, not asking, just there. And now so was James, in a different way, but still. And in the middle of them were 2 boys who needed everything she had to give. Later that afternoon, Diego arrived. He found James sitting alone outside Micah's room, reading over medical brochures. Diego stood there for a moment before speaking. You actually look like him? He said. James glanced up, surprised. Micah. Yeah. James smiled faintly. That's a compliment. Maybe. He sat beside him, not asking permission. They say you're the match. They do. Are you scared? James looked over. Terrified. Diego nodded. Good. At least you're honest. James leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I've got a lot to make up for, Diego. Not just years, but the lies your silence covered. I know I don't get a pass." Diego shrugged. "I don't need you to be perfect. I just need you to stay." That hit James harder than anything else had. "I will," he said quietly, "for as long as you'll let me." Inside the room, Micah stirred again. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused. Monica rushed to his side. Hey, I'm right here." Micah blinked slowly. "Mom, did I dream it? Was he really here?" "No," she whispered. "He's really here. Is he staying?" She looked down at her son, so young and so wise, even in weakness. "I think he finally understands what that word means." Micah's lips curved into the faintest smile, and for the first time something shifted in Monica's chest. Not forgiveness, but maybe beginning. The days began to blur into one another, flashes of nurses moving quickly, the steady beeping of heart monitors' forms to sign updates to process. Monica lived in scrubs and oversized sweaters. Now her bag always half-packed, her phone always charged. There was no room for routine anymore, only response, only waiting. And yet in the chaos, something unfamiliar had started to grow. A rhythm. James had become part of it. He arrived each morning without needing to be called. He learned how Micah liked his water with ice and Diego's favorite podcast to distract him during tests. He asked questions at rounds, took notes during consults, and never once left early. Not anymore. Monica watched from the corner, cautious. It wasn't trust, not yet. But it was effort. And for now, that was enough. "You're not sleeping," Lena said one night as they stood outside the ICU, arms crossed in the chill. Monica looked up from her notes. "No time for that. You need to let someone else carry part of this." "I am. James is here." Lena raised an eyebrow. "And how's that going?" Monica hesitated. "Complicated. That man is walking on a wire. I've never seen someone more terrified to breathe wrong around you." "He should be." Lena nodded. "Still, he's showing up. And if you're being honest with yourself, that scares you more than if he hadn't." Monica didn't answer. She didn't need to. Inside the room, Micah was awake, Diego beside him. "Dad said the results should be in soon," Micah said, voice low. Diego nodded. "You nervous?" Micah shrugged. "More worried about you. They said your condition's not as bad. But still." "I'll be fine," Diego said quickly. "They're monitoring me. You're the one who needs help now." Micah looked at him. "Do you think he's really here to stay?" Diego exhaled. "I think he's trying. That doesn't mean he gets a clean slate." "No," Diego agreed. "But maybe it means he gets a seat at the table." Micah was quiet a moment, then grinned weakly. "As long as I get to choose where he sits." Down the hall, James stood at the nurse's station, reviewing a thick file folder. When he saw Monica approaching, he straightened. "They want to prep me for pre-transplant imaging tomorrow," he said. "CT blood panel, if everything holds the transplant window opens next week." Monica nodded. "Micah's been asking about it, about the risks. He should know. I told him what I could, but he wants to hear it from you." James swallowed. "Then I'll tell him." She studied him for a beat. "You've changed," she said, her voice quiet. James looked surprised. "You think so? You're slower now, softer." "I lost a lot," he said. "Turns out that leaves marks." Monica turned, walking beside him toward the ICU. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. He stopped. "The divorce." She nodded, not looking at him. He didn't rush his answer. "I regret not trusting you. I regret leaving you to carry all of this alone. And I regret how long it took me to see what mattered." She glanced at him, her face unreadable. "But no," he added. "I don't regret where it brought me, because I get to be here now, and I won't waste that." They stepped into the room. Micah sat up slowly as they entered, eyes alert. James moved to his side. "Hey, champ, you gonna talk to me straight?" Micah asked. James pulled up a chair. "Always." Micah nodded toward the clipboard. "What's the deal?" "We're a full match," James said. "That means I can be your donor. Surgery's not small. It comes with risk, but not the kind we can't manage. The hardest part will be recovery. For both of us." Micah chewed his lip. "But it gives me a shot." James leaned forward. "It gives you a life, a full one." Micah looked over at Monica, then at Diego. Then he looked back at James. "Then let's do it." James nodded, emotion thick in his throat. "You've got it." That night, as the hospital lights dimmed, Monica sat by the window again, looking down at the parking lot. Malik found her there, a takeout bag in hand. "You're always the last to eat," he said, handing it over. "I didn't realize I was hungry until now." They sat side by side on the window ledge, watching the slow movement of headlights. "He's stepping up," Malik said. "Yes." "You okay with that? I don't know." He glanced at her. "You don't owe me answers. I just want you to be okay." She looked over, her voice softer now. "You've been more than okay. You've been solid when everything else was falling apart." He offered a small smile. "That's easy. You've got gravity." She chuckled, tired. "Now you're just being poetic." "Maybe. Or maybe I've been here long enough to know where the center of the room is." Monica leaned her head against the glass. "I used to think strength was doing everything alone," she whispered. "But maybe it's letting someone stand beside you, even if it's only for a while." Malik didn't speak. He didn't need to. In the quiet, in the cracks between chaos, something unexpected had begun to grow. Not resolution, but grace. The morning of the transplant arrived quietly, no fanfare, no chaos. Just stillness. Savannah's skies were overcast, the gray light spilling gently into the hospital room, like the day knew how heavy it all was. Monica stood in the hallway, arms crossed, watching through the glass as nurses prepped Micah. He looked calm. Too calm, like he was holding back for her sake. James was already in pre-op on a different floor. They'd wheeled him out an hour ago, after Diego squeezed his hand and muttered something Monica couldn't quite hear. Probably a joke, maybe a promise. They had a way of talking with barely any words, like they'd known each other long before they were born. Micah shifted on the bed, turning his head toward her. "Mom," he said softly. She stepped inside. "I'm here." He patted the space beside him. "Sit for a sec." She did, smoothing the edge of his blanket like she used to when he was little, and still thought monsters lived in closets. "You nervous?" she asked. He shrugged. "A little. But I'm more scared about what happens after." She looked at him. "After the surgery, no. After everything. Like how we're all supposed to be around each other. What if it doesn't work? What if I wake up and Dad regrets it, or you go back to hating him?" Monica exhaled slowly. "You don't need to carry that." "But I do," he said, eyes clear. "You and Dad. You've both been living like your history is the problem. But maybe it's the silence. Maybe it's all the things you didn't say that keep getting louder." She stared at him, stunned. "You're 18. I'm observant." She smiled, but there was a tremble in it. "I don't hate him," she said. "I did, for a long time. But hate doesn't hold up under this kind of pressure. It breaks apart, and underneath it there's just hurt." Micah nodded, his voice quiet. "So what now? I don't know," she said honestly. "But I know this." He showed up. "And sometimes that's the first real miracle." The nurse stepped in, clipboard in hand. They're ready to take him down. Micah nodded, gripping Monica's hand. Tell Diego he better not eat my pudding while I'm out. She laughed, holding back tears. Deal. As they wheeled him out, she followed until the elevator doors closed. Then she sank into the hallway bench, hands shaking. It was Malik who found her there minutes later. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her, their shoulders touching. Both of them are in now, she murmured. He nodded. You've done everything you could. I keep wondering if I'm supposed to pray for something more. Or just wait. He turned to her. Monica, you've held this family together with your bare hands. Now it's time to let someone hold you. She looked at him, eyes wet but steady. You think I don't see how this is tearing you up? He continued. Watching them fight for their lives while you fight to stay composed. It's okay to fall apart a little. She leaned against him, the side of her face pressing into his shoulder. I used to think if I stopped moving, everything would collapse. Malik wrapped his arm around her. Let it collapse. I'm right here. An hour passed, then 2. Monica paced, drank half a cup of coffee, read the same paragraph of a magazine 6 times, called Lena, then hung up before the voicemail beep. Finally, Dr. Snyder appeared. Her heart stopped. He smiled gently. Micah's in recovery. Everything went smoothly. Monica let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding for years. And James, she asked? He's doing well. Tired but stable. The donation went exactly as we hoped. She nodded, hands clasped to her chest, tears slipping out fast. Later that evening, when Micah finally stirred in the recovery room, Diego was already there, sketching in the notebook he kept tucked into every hoodie. You're awake, Diego whispered. Micah blinked slowly. You look like you haven't slept. You look like you fought a bear. Micah managed a half laugh. I feel like I did. They sat in the soft light of machines and monitors, the silence between them warm. Then Micah asked, did he make it? Diego nodded. Yeah, he's good. Mom was a wreck. Malik held her together. Micah closed his eyes again. I'm glad she's not alone. The next day, Monica walked into James's recovery room. He looked pale but alert, worn but proud. You did it, she said. So did you. She pulled up a chair. They told me you'd be in pain. Not more than I deserve, he said, grinning faintly. Monica rolled her eyes. You always deflect with guilt. He looked at her, then serious. I know I can't go back and undo the past. But if there's a road forward, I'd take it, even if it's the long way around. Monica studied him for a long moment. There might be a road, she said softly. But don't rush it, I won't. And if you hurt them again, she added, I'll make sure your hospital bills get lost in the system forever. James chuckled, wincing. Fair. She stood brushing his hair off his forehead, a simple, quiet gesture. Not forgiveness, not quite, but something close. As she turned to leave, he called out. Monica, yeah, thank you, for giving me the chance to be something better. She paused in the doorway. You're not there yet, she said. But maybe you're finally facing the right direction. 3 days after the transplant, the hospital room no longer felt like a battleground. The urgency had passed, replaced by a strange calm, fragile but real. Micah was sitting up now, his color better, the tubes and wires fewer. He was tired, yes, but alert. Restless in the way only a teenager recovering from major surgery could be. Monica stood at the edge of the bed, folding fresh clothes she'd brought from home. She looked up to find Micah watching her with a faint smile. What she asked? You're doing that thing again. What thing, acting busy so you don't have to talk about the big stuff? She laughed under her breath. Well, someone raised a very observant son. 2 of them, he said. She looked at him. You feeling strong enough to make jokes? He gave her a look. Always. She sat down beside him and took a breath. You scared me, she said softly. More than anything else ever has. I know, he whispered. And I'm so proud of you. I know that too. The door creaked open, and Diego slipped in carrying a plastic bag of snacks and a beat-up chess set. Hospital vending machines need serious therapy, he said, dropping into the chair next to the bed. But I found peanut M&Ms, so it's a win. Micah lit up. Finally. Something that doesn't taste like cardboard. They started setting up the chessboard, while Monica stepped out, giving them space. In the hallway, Malik waited by the window, sipping coffee. He looked up as she approached, offering the cup. I got your weird oat milk thing. She took it gratefully. You're learning. I adapt under pressure. They leaned against the glass, watching the city move below. He's doing better, Malik said. He's got his color back, and his sarcasm. She smiled faintly, then sighed. I keep wondering how different this would have been if James had stayed, she said. Would they have known earlier? Would we have avoided all this? Malik looked at her carefully. Maybe. Or maybe it would have broken in a different way. Monica didn't respond right away. Micah and Diego know who you are, Malik added. Not because James left, but because you stayed. That counts for more than you think. She swallowed hard. I never wanted to do it alone. I know. He turned toward her, quieter now. And you don't have to anymore. She looked up at him, really looked, and for the first time didn't flinch from the invitation behind his words. You've been here through every moment, she said, even when you didn't have to be. I wanted to be. They stood there, a silence thick with more than just gratitude. Meanwhile, across the hospital floor, James lay in his room staring at the ceiling. The ache in his body was real, but not unbearable. What pressed on his chest now wasn't the surgery, it was everything that came after. A knock on the door made him turn. To his surprise, it was Diego. James blinked. Hey, got a few minutes? Diego asked. Always. Diego stepped in slowly, sitting on the edge of the visitor's chair. You did something big, he said after a pause. Micah's alive because of you. James nodded slowly. I needed to do it. For him. For both of you. I know. Diego shifted in his seat. You scared of what comes next? James met his eyes. Terrified. Diego nodded. Good. Means you won't screw it up this time. James smiled, then sobered. I wish I could go back and explain everything he said, but explanations don't fix what was broken. No, Diego agreed. But showing up helps. James let out a slow breath. I want to be in your lives. Not just for now. For good. Diego leaned back, arms crossed. That's up to us. You don't get to decide it alone. I know that. They sat in silence for a while. Then Diego pulled a folded paper from his hoodie pocket and set it on James's tray. What's this A-list, Diego said. Stuff I think you should know, about me, about Micah, our lives. Start there. James picked it up slowly like it was something sacred. Thank you, he whispered. I didn't do it for you, Diego said. I did it for him. But maybe there's room for more. As he left, James opened the paper. It was handwritten, messy but detailed. Favorite foods. Inside jokes. Songs they grew up on. Teachers they loved. Teachers they hated. What Micah was afraid of. What Diego still dreamt of. It was a lifeline. Back in Micah's room, the chess game had stalled. You ever wonder Micah asked what would have happened if he'd stayed? Diego nodded. All the time. Do you think he would have been a good dad? I think he would have tried. But I also think Mom became a better version of herself without him. Micah looked at his brother. That's sad. It is, Diego said. But it also made us who we are. Micah studied the board. He wants to stay now. Yeah, you believe him, I'm getting there. Micah nodded. Then quietly, me too. Later that evening, Monica returned to find both boys asleep, chess pieces, mid-game M&Ms, scattered soft snoring filling the room. She smiled, then stepped into the hall. James was waiting outside, slow and careful in his movements, one hand still pressed gently to his side. Their eyes met. They're okay, she said softly. I know. He nodded, then hesitated. Can we talk? Monica paused, then nodded. Let's walk. They moved slowly down the hall, side by side, the quiet hum of machines following behind them. I've thought a lot about what comes next, James said. Not just with the boys. With you. Monica looked ahead. This isn't a story where we jump back in, James. I'm not asking to. I'm just asking if there's space for a new chapter. She stopped walking, turned to face him. There might be, she said. But it's going to take time, and truth. I've got both, he said. Finally. She nodded. Then added, let's just focus on healing right now, all of us. And for the first time since the day she walked out, they stood in the same place with no walls, no armor, and no lies. Only a fragile beginning. And maybe something worth rebuilding. A week had passed since the transplant, and the hospital no longer felt like the center of the world. The rhythm of recovery had taken over measured steps, scheduled visits, monitored progress. But underneath the routine, something deeper stirred. Monica knew it was coming. The turning point. She felt it in her chest every time she looked at Micah sleeping peacefully, or when James winced quietly while helping him adjust a pillow. Something was shifting not just in their bodies, but in all of them, in what had been broken, in what could be healed. It was Diego who voiced it first. They were back at the hotel for the weekend, giving Micah a few nights without constant visitors. Monica was folding laundry while Diego sat on the edge of the bed, toying with the hem of his sleeve. Are you going to get back with him? She froze. The air thickened. She set the towel down, slow and deliberate. Where did that come from? Diego shrugged, not meeting her eyes. It's just, he's here. All the time. And you don't look mad anymore? Not really. Monica sat beside him. I don't know the answer to that. Do you still love him? The words hit harder than she expected. She looked down at her hands. I loved him once, very deeply, and part of me still remembers that. But that's not the same, Diego said quietly. No, she said. It's not. He nodded, then after a pause added, I like Malik. She smiled, surprised by the shift. You do, he's steady, doesn't try too hard, just shows up. Monica tilted her head. Sounds familiar? Diego gave her a look. It's what you deserve. Her heart squeezed. Later that afternoon, Monica met Malik at a small cafe 2 blocks from the hospital, the kind with scratched wooden tables and the smell of cinnamon in the air. I needed some air, she said as they sat down. He nodded. Me too. They sipped quietly for a moment. The silence between them had never been uncomfortable. It was one of the things she'd grown to trust. But today it carried something heavier. I think the boys are starting to ask questions I'm not ready to answer, she said. About James. About everything. About me. About you. Malik leaned forward. Monica, I never expected you to make room for me in the middle of this storm. I just wanted you to know I was here. She looked at him, the corners of her eyes tired but honest. And you have been. You've been the only thing that hasn't changed. He nodded, quiet, then finally said, but I also know when to step back. She felt something stir in her throat. "Don't," she whispered. "Please don't step back. Not yet." He held her gaze. "Then just tell me what you need." She blinked fast, then smiled sadly. "Someone to remind me that I'm more than a mother or an ex-wife or a crisis manager?" He reached across the table and took her hand. "Monica, you've always been more than that." Meanwhile, James sat in the hospital lounge, scrolling through photos Diego had sent him. Pictures of Micah sleeping under a tangle of blankets, of Monica smiling at something off-camera, of Diego holding a bag of fast food with the pride of a man who'd conquered dinner. James hadn't asked for the photos, but he'd stared at them for hours. When Victor entered, he put his phone away quickly. "She said you're healing fast," Victor said, sitting beside him. "She's been kind," James replied. "Careful, but not cold." Victor studied him. "You're hoping for more." James sighed. "I don't know what I'm hoping for. I want to be part of their world. For real this time." Victor nodded, then said something that caught James off guard. "She still flinches when she talks about you." James frowned. "Flinches. Like the memory of you still carries weight. Not anger, not hate, just weight." James exhaled. "That's fair. You've done something brave," Victor added, "giving part of yourself for your son. But now comes the harder part. What's that living in a way that proves it meant something?" That night, Monica found herself back in Micah's room, helping him shift to his side. "Mom," he said as she adjusted the blanket, "if you're happier with Malik, you should keep him." She looked down at him, surprised. He smiled faintly. "Just because Dad's back doesn't mean he gets everything." Monica smoothed his hair. "It's not about getting things. It's about making peace with what we've lived through." "And what comes next?" He nodded, drifting off again. She stayed until his breathing deepened, then stepped into the hall, and found James standing there, hands in his pockets. "How is he asked. "Strong." They walked in silence for a while, turning the corner toward the family lounge. "I saw you with Malik earlier," James said, finally. "You looked at ease." She glanced at him. "I was." He nodded. "He's been good to you?" "Yes. And he's been good to the boys." James stopped walking. "I never expected you to wait for me, Monica, and I don't want to stand in the way of something that's real." She turned to him. "James, what you did for Micah, it changed everything. It gave us time. It gave him life. But love isn't built in a hospital wing. It takes more than showing up once." "I know," he said softly. "That's why I'm staying. Whether you forgive me or not, I'm here, as their father. And maybe, someday, as someone you can trust again." She didn't answer, but she didn't walk away either. And in that quiet space between them, something heavy shifted. Not closure, not yet, but the beginning of the truth. The air was thick with late summer heat, even inside the hospital. The AC hummed, but it didn't quite reach the corners of Micah's recovery room. Outside, the sky stretched pale and endless, dotted with clouds that looked like they didn't know where they were going. Micah had finally been cleared to go home. It should have felt like a victory lap, but no one quite knew what to do with the silence that followed the news. Monica stood near the window, arms folded, eyes scanning the discharge instructions one more time. Not because she needed to, she already knew them by heart, but because reading them again gave her something to hold on to. James was across the room, gently helping Micah ease on a t-shirt. It was still hard for him to move the way he used to. Everything required patience now. "You good?" James asked. Micah nodded, careful. "Yeah, just sore." James gave him a small smile. "That's the price of being a hero," Micah snorted. "You gave me a kidney. You're the hero." "No," James said, his voice quieter now. I was just catching up. You've always been brave. Micah looked at him for a long moment, eyes heavy but clear. Then don't stop showing up. James nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. Monica turned from the window. Micah's meds are packed. I've got the schedule set. I called the school. They'll hold everything until we decide when he's ready. James repeated gently. She paused. That's right. Before either of them could say more, Malik appeared at the door carrying a duffel bag and wearing that calm expression Monica had come to rely on. He stepped into the room with quiet familiarity, offering Micah a nod. Ready to blow this joint, Micah lit up. So ready. Malik handed the bag over to Monica, then turned to James. I'll bring the car around, he said, offering a polite nod. James returned it with equal calm. When Malik left, James reached for his wallet and pulled out something small, an old photograph worn at the corners. He handed it to Micah. What's this? Micah asked, squinting. It's from the day you were born, James said. You were maybe 6 hours old. I'd just changed my first diaper. Monica peeked over his shoulder. The image was fuzzy, but clear enough, James' younger hair wild, holding a swaddled newborn, with a look of stunned awe on his face. Micah smiled slowly. You kept this all this time? Micah looked up. You should have shown me sooner. I wasn't ready to. Micah handed it back. Keep it. You earned that memory. Outside, the car was waiting. Malik stood by the passenger door, nodding to Monica as she approached with Micah in tow. James followed close behind. You sure you've got everything? Malik asked. Yeah, Monica said, but if I forget anything, I know who to call. He grinned. I'll be 5 minutes away. Tops. As she helped Micah into the car, James stood to the side. The air between them hung heavy with what hadn't yet been said. Monica turned to him. We've come a long way in a short time. I'm not taking it for granted. She studied him. I don't know what this means. For you and me. For all of us. James nodded. I'm not asking you to decide now. Just don't close the door. She looked down, then back at him. I won't. But you'll need to keep proving you belong here. I intend to. She took a breath. We'll take it one day at a time. James smiled faintly. That's all I've ever wanted. He stepped forward, not too close, and touched her arm gently. Thank you, Monica, for giving me a chance to earn something real. She didn't pull away. I'm not doing it for you, she said. I'm doing it for them, and for me. I know. She opened the car door, settling beside Micah as Malik started the engine. As they drove away, James stood on the curb, watching them disappear into the afternoon light. Back in the car, silence filled the space for a few moments. Micah leaned against the window, eyes half closed. Then Diego, sitting in the front seat, broke the quiet. So, do we have 2 dads now, or just one and a strong backup? Monica smiled, her eyes on the road ahead. We have a family, she said. It might not look perfect, but it's ours. Diego grinned. Guess that means I'm still the favorite. Micah rolled his eyes. Only because I'm on meds. Malik laughed from the driver's seat. I'll take that piece while it lasts. Monica leaned back, her hand brushing against Micah's knee. She looked out the window as Savannah rolled past, warm and familiar. Everything was changing. And yet in this moment, everything felt exactly as it should. Not a return, not a reset, but something new, something stronger. The days at home moved differently than they had in the hospital. Slower, softer, but not easier. Micah's recovery was steady, but not without setbacks. The exhaustion would hit without warning. The pain came in waves. There were nights he couldn't sleep and mornings when just walking from his room to the kitchen felt like a mountain. Monica was always nearby, close enough to catch him if he stumbled, but far enough to let him stand on his own. One evening after another quiet dinner, where no one really finished their food, she found herself in the kitchen, hands wrapped around a mug of tea gone cold. The boys had gone to bed early. Malik was sitting outside on the back steps, scrolling his phone but not really looking at it. She slid the screen door open and stepped out. "Cold tea," she said, holding up the mug. He glanced over. Classic mom move. She sat beside him. They listened to the crickets for a while. "You've been quiet today," he said. She nodded. "Just processing. Good kind or bad kind both." She paused. "Micah's labs came back good. Stable. It's what we hoped for." "That's amazing." "Yeah," she said softly. "It is." He waited. "But I also got a call from James. He wants to take the boys out this weekend. A short trip, just the three of them." Malik looked over. "How do you feel about that?" Monica hesitated. Terrified, relieved, proud, sad, all of it, because it means you're not the only one they lean on now. She nodded slowly. "I spent 18 years being everything for them, and now someone else is allowed to help carry that." Malik didn't interrupt. He just listened. "I don't know how to be just me anymore," she admitted. Malik reached out and gently took her hand. "Then let's figure that out together." She turned to look at him. "I've been thinking about us," he continued. "About what this is, what it could be." Her heart beat a little faster. "I never stepped in expecting a future," he said. "But the more I've seen you fight for your kids, the more I've watched you rise from everything you've been through, I realized I don't want to be just a chapter in your story." Monica blinked, caught off guard. "I want to be part of your next one," he finished. She looked down, thumb brushing the rim of her mug. "I care about you," she said. "More than I thought I could after everything." But he prompted gently. "But I need time. Not to figure out if I want you in my life, but to make sure I'm stepping into something with both feet. Not from fear, not from comfort, from clarity." Malik smiled. "That's all I ask." Inside the house, the boys were still awake. Micah was lying in bed with his headphones in, eyes closed. Diego stood at the foot of the bed, fiddling with a sketchbook. "You think Mom's gonna say yes?" Diego asked. Micah pulled one earbud out. "To what? To Malik? You know, like, yes, yes." Micah shrugged. "She might. I think she should." Diego raised an eyebrow. "Even with Dad back, especially with Dad back." Diego didn't say anything for a moment. "I always thought if he came back, everything would just go back to how it was, like a reset button." Micah gave him a look. "It's not a video game." "I know." Diego leaned against the wall. "But sometimes I wish it was. That we could just skip to the part where everything makes sense." Micah pulled the covers up. "Maybe this is the part where it starts to make sense." Diego chuckled. "Look at you all philosophical and stuff." "I almost died," Micah said flatly. "I earned the right to sound wise." Downstairs, Monica stood in the hallway, listening to their muffled voices. She smiled. In the morning, James showed up right on time. He stood on the porch holding a small duffel and 2 paper bags of breakfast. "Thought I'd earn a few points early," he said, lifting the bags. Diego took one. "If there's sausage biscuits in here, you've already won." Micah followed a little slower, still sore. "No speeding this time," he warned. James held up his hands. "You've got my word." Monica met James's eyes as he stepped inside. There was something in his expression, steady, measured, not trying too hard. "You okay with this?" he asked her quietly. "I am," he nodded. "I'll call every couple hours. You better." He turned to leave, then paused. "Thank you," he said, "for trusting me with this part of their lives." Monica watched them go, James helping Micah into the car. Diego already buckled in, grinning at something on his phone. And as they drove off, she didn't feel panic. She felt peace. She walked back into the house, sunlight spilling across the floor, and exhaled deeply. Something was shifting. Not in a way that erased the past, but in a way that made space for the future. The house felt unusually quiet without the boys. Monica stood in the doorway of Micah's room, straightening a few things that didn't need fixing: his blanket, a picture frame, the stack of books he hadn't touched in weeks. There was an ache in her chest, the kind that came from letting go in small pieces. Downstairs, Malik was making breakfast. The smell of cinnamon toast and scrambled eggs filled the air, warm and comforting. He hummed to himself, softly, off-key. She walked into the kitchen, barefoot, her hair still damp from the shower, wearing one of his oversized t-shirts from the laundry pile. He looked up and smiled. "You look peaceful." She tilted her head. He placed a plate in front of her and poured her a cup of coffee. "You've got that post-chaos glow." She laughed gently. "I don't think that's a real thing." "I think it is," he said. "It's what happens when you survive something that tried to swallow you whole." She picked up her fork, but didn't eat right away. "Malik," she said, her voice softer now. "Do you ever feel like we're building something in the middle of unfinished ruins?" He set down his mug and leaned against the counter. "All the time. But I also think some of the strongest things get built that way. On top of what didn't work. On top of what hurt." She nodded slowly. "It's just, I don't want to repeat the same mistakes. I've spent so long being needed, I'm not even sure what it feels like to choose someone." Malik stepped closer. "Then let's not rush. Let's choose each other one day at a time. Not because we're filling gaps, but because it feels right." She looked up at him, eyes searching open. "It does feel right," she whispered. Later that afternoon, James pulled into a small beachside inn just outside Tybee Island. The boys had spent the car ride alternating between debating the best movie trilogies and singing off-tune to 2000s throwbacks Diego insisted were classics. The air was salty, humid. The sound of gulls and waves filled the background like a lullaby. They settled into the room, 2 twin beds and a couch, simple but clean. "I call the bed closest to the AC," Diego said, tossing his bag. "You always do," Micah muttered, easing himself onto the other bed. James smiled, watching them bicker, grateful, just to be part of the noise. They headed down to the beach just before sunset, barefoot in the warm sand. Diego wandered ahead, kicking a soccer ball he'd brought, leaving James and Micah walking side by side. "You ever come here before?" Micah asked. James nodded. "Years ago, right after I graduated college. I had no money and too much time." Micah glanced at him. "Did you think about us back then?" James stopped walking, the question hanging heavy between them. "I did," he said honestly. "Every day. Then why didn't you reach out?" James sighed, staring at the horizon. "I was scared. I thought I'd missed the chance to be anything other than a mistake in your story." Micah took that in quietly. "You still might be," he said. James gave a small nod. "But maybe you're something else too," Micah added. "You're here now. You're trying." They walked a few more steps in silence. Then Micah said, "You can't just be around for the good parts. I know, I mean it. If this is real, if you're serious, you'll have to show up when it's hard, when it's boring, when I'm a jerk." James let out a laugh. "I think I can handle that." They reached a quiet spot and sat down. Diego joined them a minute later, flopping dramatically into the sand. "This is nice," he said. "We should do this more." James looked between them. "I'd like that, if you'll have me." Diego grinned. "We'll think about it." That night they ordered pizza and watched an old action movie in the hotel room. Halfway through, Micah fell asleep on the bed, and Diego curled up on the couch, phone in hand. James stayed up a little longer, staring at the ceiling. He didn't feel like a guest anymore. He felt like a father. Back home, Monica sat on the porch, her laptop balanced on her knees. She wasn't working, just pretending to be. Her mind was somewhere else. She scrolled through photos the boys had sent, selfies on the beach, a blurry picture of James squinting into the sun, a plate of overly cheesy pizza with the caption, "Dad's pick." "Not bad," she smiled. Then her phone buzzed. A text from James. "Thank you for trusting me with this weekend. They're okay. I'm okay." She stared at the message for a long time before typing back. "I didn't trust you at first. I trusted the version of you who showed up for them. I hope that's who stays." A pause. Then his reply came. "That's who I'm learning to be." She set her phone down, leaned back in the chair, and looked up at the stars beginning to flicker through the dusk. Everything felt fragile, but for the first time in a long time, it also felt possible. It was a Sunday morning, the kind that reminded Monica why she loved Savannah, the way the light crept gently through the kitchen window, golden and slow like time had finally decided to be kind. The house was full again. Micah was at the table, quietly sketching. Diego hovered over the toaster like it was a science experiment. Malik was leaning against the counter, sipping his coffee, eyes warm as they followed the gentle rhythm of the morning. James was there too, unexpected but not unwelcome. He stood at the sink, rinsing fruit sleeves rolled up like it was the most natural thing in the world. No one told him to be there. He just was. That was the difference now. No more grand gestures. No more apologies painted in bold colors. Just steady small things. Monica placed a hand on her chest, quietly, amazed at how the pieces had begun to settle. Mom, Diego said without looking up, "Can I skip class Tuesday if I finish all my work early?" She raised an eyebrow. "Why?" He pointed a butter knife toward James. "He said he'd take us to that Braves game if we're free." James looked over, smiling. "Only if you keep your grades up." "Please," Diego grinned. "My grades carry this family." Micah chuckled. "You got a C in algebra last semester." I said, "Carry, not ace." Monica shook her head, laughing quietly. It felt good. Light. Later that afternoon, she stepped outside to the porch, letting the breeze settle around her. She could hear the boys inside Micah teasing Diego Malik, humming again. The sound of James on the phone with Victor catching up, making plans. She didn't feel stretched thin anymore. She felt whole. She was watching the neighborhood kids ride their bikes past the front yard when Malik joined her. He brought her a glass of lemonade and leaned on the railing beside her. "They're loud," he said with a smile. "They're home," she replied. He watched her for a beat, then asked gently, "You ready to talk about us?" She turned to him, sunlight warming her skin. "Yeah." He didn't press, just waited. "I've been thinking a lot about what love looks like when it's not trying to fix anything, not rushing, not filling gaps." Malik nodded. "What did you come up with?" "That maybe love is the quiet decision to stay, to stand beside someone while they sort through the rubble, and not ask them to hurry." He set down his glass. "I want to be that for you. You already have been." They stood in that moment together, soft and certain. "I'm not promising some perfect future," Monica added. "I'm just saying I want to keep choosing you. That's more than enough," Malik said. A few days later, James stopped by with a folder. He asked to talk alone, so they sat on the back patio while the boys were at school. "I'm heading back to Atlanta soon," he said, setting the folder down. "Not because I want to leave, but because I think it's time I start building something from the ground up. Something of my own." She watched him carefully. "Are you sure that's the right move?" He nodded. "Yeah. It's not about running. It's about growing. I'll still visit. Still call, still show up. She opened the folder. It was full of legal documents, updated wills, shared custody plans, a college fund contribution. James, I don't want there to be questions down the line, he said. No gray areas, just clarity, stability. She closed the folder slowly. You've come a long way. I had a lot to learn, he admitted. Still do. They sat in silence for a while. You did good, Monica, James said finally. With them, with everything. She nodded, her throat tight. So did you. When it mattered most. He smiled softly. Thank you. For not shutting the door. I didn't, she said, but I did build a new one. James stood slipping his sunglasses on. I hope whoever's behind it knows how lucky he is. He does. And when he walked away, there was no pain in her chest, no regret, just gratitude. That weekend they had dinner on the porch. No big occasion, just grilled chicken corn on the cob and too much iced tea. The sun dipped low, casting gold across the table. Micah raised his glass of lemonade. To second chances. Diego added, and third ones just in case. They all laughed. Monica looked around at the faces she loved, her sons, Malik, even James from the end of the table, still part of something. Her voice was steady when she spoke. To forgiveness, to choosing family, and to building something better, even if it takes longer than you thought. They clinked glasses. And in that moment, simple, beautiful, earned Monica finally felt the weight lift from her shoulders. Not everything had gone the way she planned, but everything had brought her here. And here was exactly where she wanted to be.